Serve him the papers and make sure he knows. Pay up or we bulldoze it.
That is what Brenda Hargrove told Deputy Weeks while standing in my driveway at 7 in the morning. She was jabbing her finger at my front door like she owned the county. $47,000 in fines she pulled out of thin air against a house her HOA has zero authority over. The deputy looked uncomfortable. Brenda did not care. She had spent 2 years manufacturing violations to destroy a home my father built by hand in 1978. She wanted it gone. She wanted me gone. But Brenda's husband Wade used a fraudulent survey to build their subdivision. Her 6,000 square foot mansion sat on land my grandfather bought in 1962. Every square foot stolen. I own a demolition company, 3 bulldozers. A court order arrived before sundown. That same night, I drove my D9 to her front door, legally. What would you have done? But before I get ahead of myself, let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Garrett Lawson. I am 42 years old. I live on 380 acres of open Texas ranch land, about 40 minutes east of San Antonio. My grandfather bought the first parcel in 1962. He ran cattle, grew sorghum, and never once asked permission to exist on his own property. My father expanded the ranch through the 70s. In 1978, he built the house I still live in today. He used local limestone, quarried from a creek bed 2 miles south of the main pasture. The walls are 18 inches thick. The roof is hand-split cedar that still smells like the inside of a cigar box when the summer rain hits it right. The front porch wraps the entire east side of the house. You can sit there at dawn and watch the light come up over nothing but grass and fence line for a mile in every direction. The kitchen has the same cast iron stove my mother cooked on. The hallway still has the boot jack my grandfather bolted to the floor in 1964. The front door is solid mesquite with iron hinges my father forged in the barn. This house was not bought. It was built. By hand. By family. My father died 11 years ago. He left me the land, the house, and the family name carved into a stone gatepost at the county road. My wife Sarah died 3 years ago. Breast cancer. She was 37. She spent her last summer sitting on that porch, watching Lily chase lightning bugs across the yard at dusk. My daughter Lily is 11 now. She plays piano. She draws horses in a sketchbook she keeps under her bed. She is the reason I get up in the morning and the reason I come home at night. I run Lawson Demolition out of the east side of the property. 3 Caterpillar bulldozers, 2 Komatsu excavators, a fleet of dump trucks, and a crew of 12 men who have worked with me long enough to finish my sentences. We tear down buildings for a living. Strip malls, condemned warehouses, old apartment complexes, decommissioned industrial sites. We do it clean, we do it fast, and we do it legal. Every permit filed, every inspection passed, every load weighed and documented. In 2018, a developer named Wade Hargrove bought 400 acres of brushland directly south of my property line. Within 18 months, he had cleared it, graded it, poured streets, and built 109 homes. He called it Stone Ridge Estates. The houses were beige stucco with terracotta roofs and 3-car garages. Cookie-cutter layouts, the kind of neighborhood where everyone has a Ring doorbell, a HOA-approved mailbox, and no idea what their neighbor does for a living. Wade's wife was Brenda Hargrove, blonde, heavy-set, loud in a way that filled any room she entered. She drove a pearl-white Escalade and wore Gucci sunglasses pushed up on her forehead like a tiara. She carried a clipboard everywhere she went, and she used it like other people use a weapon. She became the self-appointed HOA president before the last house in Stone Ridge even had drywall. 6 weeks after the first families moved in, Brenda's Escalade crunched up my gravel road. She stepped out in white capri pants and a silk blouse that had no business being within a mile of a cattle ranch. She walked to my front door carrying a manila envelope. "Mr. Lawson, I'm Brenda Hargrove, president of the Stone Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. I wanted to introduce myself and deliver a few courtesy notices regarding your property." I opened the envelope on my porch after she left. 3 pages. The first was a welcome letter, inviting me to voluntarily join the HOA. The second was a community standards overview, listing approved exterior colors, landscaping guidelines, and vehicle storage rules. The third was a typed notice stating that my limestone mansion lowers surrounding property values due to aged exterior appearance and non-conforming architectural style. I looked at my house, built in 1978, solid limestone, cedar roof, porch wrapped in mesquite posts my father had sanded by hand over 3 weekends. Then I looked south at Stone Ridge Estates, stucco already cracking on a house that was 9 months old. I folded the papers, walked inside, and poured a cup of coffee. The Texas wind pushed hot through the screen door, carrying the smell of diesel from the equipment yard and fresh-cut grass from the pasture. I did not respond to the letter. That was my first mistake. Not because I should have responded, but because silence to a woman like Brenda is not peace. It is permission. The second letter arrived 3 weeks later. This one had a different tone. It was printed on Stone Ridge Estates letterhead with the HOA logo, a little oak tree inside a gold circle. The paper was heavier. The language was sharper. It cited Section 4.7 of the Stone Ridge Estates Community Covenant and listed 3 violations: unapproved exterior materials, failure to maintain landscaping to community standard, and storage of commercial vehicles in a residential zone. I read it twice at my kitchen table while Lily practiced piano in the next room. Chopin. She was getting better. Then I pulled up the county assessor's website on my laptop. My property was zoned agricultural. It had been zoned agricultural since my grandfather bought it in 1962. The Stone Ridge Estates HOA covenant applied exclusively to properties within the Stone Ridge Estates subdivision. My property was not within the subdivision. I had never signed a covenant. I had never agreed to any restriction. I had never attended a meeting. I had never received a ballot. The letter was legally meaningless. It was a piece of decorative fiction printed on expensive paper. I filed it in a drawer and went back to work. Here is something most people do not know. Under Texas Property Code, a homeowners association can only enforce its covenants against property owners who are bound by those covenants through deed restrictions or recorded agreements. If your land predates the subdivision and you never signed on, the HOA has exactly as much authority over your property as a stranger on the bus, which is none, 0, not a fraction of a percentage point. The third letter did not come alone. It came with a county inspector. Brenda had filed a formal complaint with the county building department. She claimed my mansion was structurally condemned and poses an imminent hazard to adjacent residents. A man named Doug showed up in a white county truck on a Thursday morning, khaki pants, clipboard, digital camera around his neck. He was polite. He walked through every room of the house. He checked the foundation with a level. He inspected the roof from the attic. He ran his hand along the limestone walls in the main hall and actually whistled. He stood on my front porch afterward and shook his head slowly. "Mr. Lawson, this house is in better shape than half the subdivision down the road. Whoever filed this complaint either hasn't seen it or doesn't understand construction. I'm marking it unfounded." He shook my hand, climbed in his truck, and drove away. I watched the red dust rise and settle behind him in the 98-degree heat. The air shimmered over the gravel. Diesel from the equipment yard mixed with the smell of sun-baked mesquite. 2 weeks later, Brenda escalated again. She installed signs at the Stone Ridge Estates entrance, large yellow placards on wooden posts driven into the ground with a post hole digger. They read, "Warning, condemned structure adjacent to community. Do not approach." There was one problem. The signs were planted on my property, not the subdivision side, my side. 6 feet past the property line, right along the gravel shoulder of my access road. I walked down that evening with a pair of channel locks and a pry bar. I pulled every post out of the ground myself. I stacked them neatly at the subdivision entrance with a handwritten note taped to the top. "These were on my land. Please collect your property." Brenda called the sheriff. Deputy Colton Weeks showed up around 4 the next afternoon. Young guy, crew cut, starched tan uniform. He was respectful. He explained that a complaint had been filed about property destruction and trespassing. "Deputy, those signs were planted on my land without my permission. I removed them. That is not property destruction. That is property maintenance." He looked at the note I had left. He looked at the stacked signs. He took a few steps toward the property line and looked down the road at the rooftops of Stone Ridge Estates. "Mr. Lawson, I don't see a crime here. Have a good evening." He tipped his hat, got in his cruiser, and pulled away. Lily was on the porch when I walked back up the drive. She had her sketchbook open on her knees. She had drawn a picture of the deputy's car with the light bar on top, surprisingly accurate for an 11-year-old.
Did we do something wrong, Dad?
No, sweetheart. Somebody else did. That night I sat on the porch with a glass of iced tea and listened to the wind push through the cedars along the creek. The air was thick and hot, the way it stacks up in central Texas before a summer storm. The cattle were settled. The equipment yard was dark. Somewhere to the south, the glow of Stone Ridge's streetlights bled into the sky like an infection on the horizon. I should have known Brenda was just getting warmed up. The cease and desist letter arrived by certified mail on a Monday. It was printed on the letterhead of a law firm called Kilpatrick, Barnes, and Duff. Brenda's name was listed as the client. The letter demanded that I immediately cease all commercial operations on my property because my equipment yard violates residential zoning ordinances applicable to the greater Stone Ridge community area. I read it standing at my mailbox. The metal was hot enough to fry bacon. I called my buddy Clint, who had done zoning work for half the ranches in the county. He laughed so hard I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Garrett, your land has been zoned agricultural since Kennedy was president. A cease and desist about residential zoning violations on ag land is like writing a parking ticket for a boat in the ocean. It does not apply." I filed the letter with the others. But Brenda was not operating on logic. She was operating on fury. And fury, I was learning, has an unlimited budget. 2 weeks later, I received a notice from the county commissioner's office. There was going to be a public hearing to consider reclassifying a portion of my property from agricultural to residential zoning. The request had been filed by a county commissioner named Dale Perkins. Dale happened to be Wade Hargrove's college fraternity brother. I put on a clean shirt and drove to the county building on a Wednesday morning. The hearing room smelled like floor wax and old coffee. There were 8 people in the gallery. Brenda sat in the front row with her clipboard. Wade sat 2 seats behind her in a golf shirt, arms crossed, jaw tight. I brought 2 documents. My deed, recorded in 1962, my agricultural exemption certificate, renewed annually for 63 consecutive years. Commissioner Perkins opened the hearing. He read the reclassification proposal in a voice that sounded rehearsed. He asked if there were any objections. I stood up. "Commissioner, my name is Garrett Lawson. I own the property in question. This land has been zoned agricultural since before this building was built. The ag exemption has been active and renewed every year without interruption. There is no legal basis for reclassification, and the request was not initiated by the landowner." Perkins looked at his 2 colleagues on the panel. They looked at each other. One of them, a woman named Gutierrez, leaned into her microphone. "Commissioner Perkins, is the landowner requesting this change?" "No, ma'am." "Then I move to dismiss." "Second," said the 3rd commissioner before Perkins could breathe. Hearing dismissed. 7 minutes total. Brenda's clipboard hit the chair when she stood up. The sound echoed off the cinder block walls. I drove home thinking it was over. I was wrong by about 1,000 miles. 3 days later, I drove out to check the south fence line and found 2 concrete Jersey barriers blocking my access road, orange and white striped, the kind you see on highway construction sites. They were positioned side by side, completely blocking the gravel road that connected my property to the county road. My ranch foreman Hector called me on the radio. "Boss, the cattle can't get to the south pasture. Something's blocking the crossing." I parked my truck, walked up to the barriers, and looked at them. Brand new. No county markings, no permit tags, no authorization signs. I called the county road department. A clerk named Sheila answered. "Sir, that road is a county easement. Nobody has a permit to place barriers on a county easement. We'll send a crew." 24 hours later, a county crew arrived with a flatbed and removed the barriers. The foreman told me they had been placed without any permit, any request, or any notification. Someone had just dropped them there. I did not need a detective to figure out who. That same week, letters appeared in every mailbox in Stone Ridge Estates. Not from the HOA, personal letters, from Brenda. Each one described me as a dangerous individual operating heavy machinery adjacent to a family neighborhood. She called my equipment yard an active threat to children's safety. She referenced ongoing county investigations, that did not exist. Lily came home from school on Friday with red eyes. "Dad, a kid at school said his mom told him we're dangerous. She said you're going to hurt someone with your bulldozers." I knelt down and looked at my daughter. She had Sarah's eyes, brown, serious, unblinking. "Lily, some people are afraid of things they don't understand. We haven't done anything wrong, and we're not going to." She nodded. She went to her room. I heard the piano start a few minutes later, something slow and sad. That night, standing in the equipment yard with the wind clanging the metal gate against its post, red dust still hanging in the air from the day's work, I made a decision. I was done playing defense. Brenda's nuclear option arrived on a Tuesday morning. I was in the kitchen making pancakes for Lily when I heard tires on the gravel. I looked out the window. A county sheriff's cruiser, same brown and gold markings. It was Deputy Weeks again, same crew cut, same starched uniform. But his face was different this time. He looked uncomfortable, like a man delivering news he did not want to carry. He knocked. I opened the door. Lily was behind me, syrup on her chin. "Mr. Lawson, I have a document to deliver." He handed me a folded, legal-size paper. It was thick, like someone had stuffed 3 pages into one envelope. The paper was crisp, new ink. I could smell it, that sharp chemical scent of a laser printer running hot. I unfolded it on the porch. Inside the house, Lily started playing piano again. Something by Debussy, soft and careful. The document was formatted to look like a court order. It had a case number, a judicial header, and language that read like a legal command. It stated that I owed the Stone Ridge Estates Homeowners Association $47,000 in accumulated fines, penalties, and enforcement fees. It further stated that if the amount was not paid within 30 days, the non-compliant structure, my home, the house my father built, would be subject to mandatory demolition proceedings. Pay $47,000. Or watch them tear my house down. I read every line, twice. My hands were steady. My jaw was not. The document was not actually a court order. It was an HOA enforcement notice dressed up to look like one. The header was mimicked. The case number was fabricated. The judicial language was invented. Deputy Weeks had not delivered a court order. He had delivered a piece of HOA theater with a sheriff's department stamp on the envelope, because Brenda had figured out how to get the sheriff's office to serve HOA documents as a courtesy. But there was something real buried inside the fiction. Attached to the enforcement notice was a recorded lien, filed with the county clerk's office, stamped, dated, assigned a document number in the county records system. The lien claimed the Stone Ridge Estates HOA was owed $47,000 by the owner of my parcel for unpaid community assessments and compliance penalties. A lien on my deed, filed in county records. That was not theater. That was a weapon. I sat down on the porch step. The paper trembled slightly in the evening breeze. Lily was still playing inside. I could hear every note through the screen door, delicate and precise, completely unaware that someone was trying to take the only home she had ever known. If the lien was valid, and it appeared to be properly recorded, it could cloud my title. It could prevent me from selling, refinancing, or transferring the property. It could be used as leverage to force a judicial sale. It was a financial anchor bolted to my family's 63 years of unbroken ownership. I needed help. Not someday, not next week, now. I called Earl Stanton. Earl was in his 70s. He lived about 6 miles north, on a piece of land his family had worked since the 40s. He had been the county clerk for 22 years before retiring. He knew every deed, every survey, and every back-channel maneuver that had ever been run through that office. "Earl, someone filed a lien on my property through county records, an HOA lien, for $47,000, on land that isn't even in the HOA. There was a long pause. I heard him set down a coffee cup on a saucer. "Garrett, that should not be possible. A lien from a homeowners association can only attach to property bound by that association's covenants. Your land is not in Stone Ridge. It never was." "I know, but the lien is recorded. I saw the stamp." Another pause. Longer this time. "Son, somebody inside that clerk's office fast-tracked that filing. There are checks. There are reviews. An HOA lien on a non-member parcel should have been flagged and rejected at intake. Somebody pushed it through. He took a breath. Something smells wrong, Garrett, and I think it smells like Wade Hargrove. I hung up the phone. The evening light was turning orange over the fence line. Lily had stopped playing. I could hear her in the kitchen, washing her plate, being responsible, being 11. I looked at the lien document one more time. Then I folded it carefully, walked inside, and locked it in the fireproof safe next to my father's deed. If Brenda wanted a fight about property lines, she was about to get one, but not the kind she expected. Earl called me back the next morning at 6:15. I was already on the porch with coffee. The sun was a thin red line along the eastern horizon. Somewhere in the south pasture, a mockingbird was running through its catalog. Garrett, I want you to go to the county records office today. Pull your grandfather's original deed from 1962. Pull your father's deed from 1978. Then pull Wade Hargrove's subdivision plat survey from 2018. Compare the property lines. What am I looking for? You'll know it when you see it. I dropped Lily at school, drove to the county building, and spent 4 hours in the records room. The clerk recognized me. She brought me 3 flat file drawers and a magnifying lamp. I pulled my grandfather's deed first, dated March 14th, 1962, hand-typed on county issue paper. Legal description clear as a bell. The southern boundary of the Lawson property was marked by a concrete monument and a bearing line that ran east-northeast along a creek bed. Then I pulled my father's deed from 1978, recorded when he formalized the inheritance. Same legal description, same southern boundary, same monument reference. Then I pulled Wade Hargrove's subdivision plat, dated June 2018, prepared by a survey firm called Lone Star Land Services. I laid them side by side under the magnifying lamp. I traced the southern boundary of my property on the 1962 deed with my finger. Then I traced the northern boundary of the Stone Ridge Estate subdivision on Wade's plat. They did not match. My grandfather's deed placed the southern boundary along the creek bed. Wade's survey moved it north by approximately 340 feet. That shift consumed 2.3 acres of what was, by every recorded deed going back to 1962, Lawson family land. I sat back in my chair. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. The records room smelled like old paper and binding adhesive. 2.3 acres. I pulled up the Stone Ridge subdivision map. Lots 41 through 45 fell within those 2.3 acres. I checked the lot assignments. Lot 43 was the largest. Corner lot. Premium position. A 6,000 square foot custom home. Brenda Hargrove's mansion. Her house was built on my land, not partially, not a sliver of encroachment. The entire footprint, foundation, driveway, swimming pool, detached garage, sat on 2.3 acres that my family had owned since before Brenda Hargrove was born. Wade's surveyor had shifted the property line to steal my land. He had built an entire corner of his subdivision on a fraudulent survey. I drove home and called Nina Calloway. Nina was a real estate attorney in Austin who specialized in boundary disputes and property fraud. Earl had given me her number. I told her what I had found. Garrett, I need you to hire an independent surveyor, not Lone Star Land Services. Someone with no connection to the Hargroves or the subdivision. Have them survey the southern boundary using the 1962 deed legal description. I hired Jesse Vance. Jesse was an independent licensed surveyor out of New Braunfels. He had 40 years of experience and a reputation for precision that made other surveyors nervous. Jesse spent 2 full days on my property with a crew, GPS equipment, and the original deed in a plastic sleeve. He located the original 1962 concrete monument buried under 8 inches of soil and brush. The monument had not moved in 63 years. He called me with his report. Garrett, the 1962 boundary is exactly where the deed says it is. The Stone Ridge subdivision plat moved the line 340 feet north of the actual monument. 2.3 acres of your land are inside that subdivision, 5 lots, including the big one on the corner. The power shift was complete. 24 hours earlier, I was a man about to lose his home to a fraudulent lien. Now I was the legal owner of the ground beneath my enemy's mansion. Here is something worth understanding. In Texas, adverse possession, the legal concept of gaining ownership through continuous occupation, requires 10 consecutive years of open, notorious, and hostile use. Brenda had lived on that land for 6 years. She needed 10. She did not have them. She never would. The land was mine. It had always been mine. And now I could prove it. I met Nina Calloway at her office in Austin on a Friday morning. Her office was on the 3rd floor of a limestone building on Congress Avenue. She had a glass desk, 3 monitors, and a framed copy of the Texas Property Code on the wall behind her chair. She was 46, dark hair pulled back, glasses on a chain. She talked fast and thought faster. I laid everything on her desk. The 1962 deed, the 1978 deed, Wade's subdivision plat, Jesse Vance's independent survey report, the recorded lien, every letter Brenda had ever sent me. Nina spent 45 minutes reading. She did not speak. She made notes in the margins with a red pen. When she finished, she took off her glasses, set them on the desk, and looked at me. Garrett, you own the ground her house sits on, every square foot. The 2018 survey is fraudulent. The boundary was moved to accommodate the subdivision plat, and your land was absorbed without your knowledge or consent. Under Texas Property Code, Section 5.151, construction of an unauthorized structure on another person's land gives the landowner the right to petition for removal. She paused. And that lien she filed? It's void on its face. An HOA cannot place a lien on property that is not subject to its covenants. But the fact that it was recorded means someone at the clerk's office either made a serious error or was complicit. Either way, we can have it vacated. She picked up her red pen and started writing on a legal pad. Here is what we are going to do. Step 1. We file a quiet title action confirming your ownership of the 2.3 acres. The evidence is overwhelming. The original deed, the monument, the independent survey, this is not a close call. Step 2. We file a formal complaint with the county about the fraudulent 2018 survey. That triggers an investigation. I will also prepare a criminal referral for Wade Hargrove for filing a fraudulent instrument. Step 3. Once the quiet title is confirmed, we petition the court for removal of the unauthorized structure. Your house, your land, your right. She looked up. Garrett, I also want to file an emergency motion. Brenda is actively harassing you. She filed a fraudulent lien. She is using the HOA as a weapon against a non-member. The court needs to know this is not a routine boundary dispute. This is a pattern of abuse. I nodded. My throat was dry. How long? If the judge grants the emergency motion, we could have a hearing within 3 weeks. I drove home that evening on Highway 281 with the windows down. The air smelled like juniper and warm asphalt. By the time I turned onto the county road, the plan was locked in my head like a combination. That night, after Lily went to bed, I walked out to the equipment yard. The D9 Cat was parked at the end of the row. 68,000 pounds of steel, painted yellow, blade wider than a pickup truck. I climbed up, sat in the operator's seat, and looked south toward the glow of Stone Ridge. I ran my hand along the hydraulic controls, metal on metal, cold and precise. Then I climbed down and got to work on the phone. Earl Stanton agreed to testify as a witness to the deed history. He had personally handled the 1962 recording when he was a junior clerk. His memory was sharp, and his credibility was ironclad. Jesse Vance submitted his survey report as a formal expert declaration. GPS coordinates, monument verification, photographic evidence. Every line matched the 1962 deed. 3 neighbors on the north side of my property, ranchers who had known my family for decades, signed affidavits describing Brenda's harassment campaign. The signs, the barriers, the letters. The sheriff calls. Tom Bridger, a reporter at the county newspaper, caught wind of the story. He called me on a Wednesday evening. Mr. Lawson, I've been hearing things about a survey dispute between your property and Stone Ridge Estates. I'd like to look into it. Tom, when the time is right, I'll give you everything you need. The pieces were falling into place. The legal filings were prepared, the evidence was assembled. The witnesses were ready. I oiled the D9 one more time that night. The hydraulic cylinders gleamed under the work lights. The blade edge was sharp. Inside the house, through the kitchen window, I could see the glow of Lily's nightlight in her room. I was not angry. I was precise. Brenda found out about the lawyer on a Monday. I do not know how. Small towns leak information the way old pipes leak water, slowly, constantly, and from joints you forgot existed. By Tuesday, she was in full panic mode. I got the first sign of it Wednesday morning. I was walking the south fence line with Hector, checking on the cattle, when I saw it. The barbed wire had been cut. Not in one place, in 3. Clean cuts, made with bolt cutters, spaced 50 yards apart. The wire coiled on the ground like dead snakes. Morning fog hung low over the grass. The cattle were scattered south, lowing in the mist, confused, and heading toward the subdivision. Hector and I spent 2 hours rounding them up on horseback before a single cow wandered into someone's backyard pool. I knew it was not random. Barbed wire does not cut itself in 3 evenly spaced locations on the same night. I checked my trail cameras. I had installed 4 of them along the south fence line 2 months earlier after the barrier incident. The cameras were motion-activated, infrared-capable, and time-stamped. At 2:14 in the morning, a man in dark clothes approached the fence from the subdivision side. He carried bolt cutters. He cut the wire at 3 points, working quickly, and walked back toward Stone Ridge. The camera caught his face clearly on the 3rd cut when he turned toward the infrared beam. I did not recognize him, but the white work van he climbed into at the edge of the frame had a company name on the side. I zoomed in on my laptop. Hargrove Custom Contracting. Wade's company. Wade's employee. Brenda's orders. 2 days later, before I could even report the fence cutting, Brenda filed a complaint with the County Animal Control Office. She claimed my cattle had trespassed into the subdivision. She described them as loose, aggressive livestock endangering children and property. She demanded I be fined and my animals impounded. I drove to the Animal Control Office with my trail camera footage on a USB drive. Ma'am, here is video of a contractor employed by Brenda Hargrove's husband cutting my fence at 2 in the morning. My cattle did not escape. They were released deliberately. The complaint was dismissed before lunch. Meanwhile, in Austin, Nina was running into resistance. Wade Hargrove had activated his network. His attorney, the same lawyer from the cease and desist, had filed a motion to delay the quiet title hearing. The motion argued that additional time was needed to conduct a comprehensive survey review. Nina called me that afternoon. Garrett, they're stalling. Wade's lawyer knows the survey is indefensible. He's buying time. But Judge Keene denied the delay. The hearing is in 2 weeks. Good. Let them scramble. But the scrambling got ugly. On a Thursday evening, I pulled the mail from the box at the end of the drive. Between the electric bill and a flyer for tractor parts, there was a plain white envelope. No return address, no postage, hand-delivered. Inside was a single sheet of white paper with 4 words typed in the center. Drop it, or else. I stood at the mailbox in the fading light. The live oaks threw long shadows across the gravel. A mockingbird was singing somewhere in the brush. I turned the paper over. Nothing on the back. The next morning I drove to the sheriff's office and filed a report. I handed over the letter, the envelope, and the trail camera footage of the fence cutting. Deputy Weeks took my statement personally. Mr. Lawson, we're going to take this seriously. Deputy, I appreciate that. And I want you to know, I'm not dropping anything. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. I drove home. Lily was at the kitchen table doing math homework. She looked up when I came in. Dad, where did you go? Just had to talk to someone, sweetheart. She went back to her fractions. I stood at the kitchen window and watched the wind bend the grass in the south pasture. The fence was repaired. The cattle were calm. The court date was set. 14 days. The courtroom was on the 2nd floor of the county courthouse. Fluorescent lights. Drop ceiling. The kind of room where the air conditioning hums so loud it becomes part of your thoughts. It smelled like floor polish and paper. Judge Patricia Keene presided. She was in her early 60s, silver hair, reading glasses, no patience for theater. She had been on the bench for 18 years. Nina and I sat at the plaintiff's table on the left. She had the case file organized in 3 binders. The original deeds, Jesse Vance's survey, the trail camera evidence, the threat letter, the fraudulent lien, affidavits from Earl, the neighbors, and the county inspector. Brenda sat on the right side with Wade's attorney, a man named Keith Dunlap from Kilpatrick, Barnes, and Duff, the same firm that had sent the cease and desist. Brenda was wearing a navy blue dress and her pearls. Her clipboard was nowhere in sight. Wade sat behind her in the gallery. He had not hired his own attorney. He thought Dunlap could handle both of them. That was a mistake. Nina opened with the quiet title claim. She presented the 1962 deed, the 1978 deed, and Jesse Vance's independent survey. She showed the court the location of the original concrete monument. She overlaid the 2018 subdivision plat on the deed map using a projector. The discrepancy was visible to everyone in the room. A child could have seen it. Your Honor, the boundary was moved 340 feet north. 2.3 acres of the Lawson family property were absorbed into the Stone Ridge Estates subdivision plat without the landowner's knowledge, consent, or compensation. Judge Keene studied the overlay for a full minute without speaking. She looked at Dunlap. Counselor, does the respondent dispute the location of the 1962 monument? Dunlap stood up. Your Honor, the respondent contends that the 2018 survey supersedes the prior boundary and that continuous occupation establishes adverse possession? Judge Keene removed her glasses. Counselor, the Stone Ridge subdivision was constructed in 2018. That is 6 years ago. Texas requires 10 consecutive years of open, notorious, and hostile possession under the 5-year or 10-year statutes. Your clients have neither. Do you have another argument? Dunlap looked at his notes. He looked at Wade. Wade's face was gray. Your Honor, may I have a moment to confer with my client? You may. They whispered for 90 seconds. Then Dunlap stood up again. His voice was different, thinner. Your Honor, after further consultation, I am requesting permission to withdraw as counsel for the respondent in this matter. The courtroom went quiet. Not silent, quiet. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Papers rustled. Someone in the gallery shifted in a wooden chair. Judge Keene looked at Dunlap over her glasses. Counselor, you are withdrawing in the middle of a hearing? Yes, Your Honor. Noted. Mrs. Hargrove, you are now unrepresented. Do you wish to proceed or request a continuance? Brenda stood up. Her hands were shaking. Her face had gone the color of old chalk. This is my home. You cannot take my home. Judge Keene's voice was level, measured, final. Mrs. Hargrove, the evidence before this court is clear. The property described in the Lawson deed of 1962 includes the 2.3 acres on which your residence was constructed. The 2018 survey, filed by Lone Star Land Services, does not reflect the actual boundary. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff. She paused. The structure located on lots 41 through 45 was constructed without the landowner's authorization. Under Texas Property Code, Section 5.151, the landowner is entitled to petition for removal. Given that Mr. Lawson is a licensed demolition contractor, the court authorizes him to execute the removal under court supervision within 72 hours. Brenda screamed, literally screamed. The sound bounced off the cinder block walls. You can't do this. That's my home. I've lived there for 6 years. Judge Keene looked at her, calm, unbothered. Ma'am, it is his land. It has been his land since 1962. You may pursue a civil claim against the developer who sold you a home on property he did not own. But this court will not allow an unauthorized structure to remain on the plaintiff's land. The gavel came down. That evening, back at the ranch, Deputy Weeks pulled up the drive one more time. He had a paper in his hand. The same old lien enforcement notice from Brenda, the one filed weeks ago, finally grinding through the system. I took it from him. I read it. I smiled. Deputy, you might want to stick around tonight. Things are going to get interesting. He looked at me. I think he already knew. 9 o'clock. Same night. The sun had been down for an hour. The sky was deep blue going to black, and the first stars were sharp over the tree line. The air still carried the weight of the day. Warm dust, dried grass, the faintest trace of mesquite smoke from somewhere north. I walked into the equipment yard. The D9 Cat was waiting. 68,000 pounds, 12-foot blade, diesel engine the size of a dining table. I had serviced it myself that afternoon. Fresh oil, topped fluids, greased every pin and bushing. I climbed up. The metal rungs were still warm from the sun. I settled into the operator's seat. I turned the key. The engine caught with a deep, rolling growl that vibrated up through my boots. I dropped the transmission into first and rolled out onto the county road. The headlights cut 2 clean beams through the dark. The treads bit into the asphalt with a rhythmic clank you could hear a quarter-mile away. Behind me, Hector followed in a pickup with hazard lights. Behind him, 2 dump trucks. We were not sneaking anywhere. This was a procession. At the entrance to Stone Ridge Estates, 2 county sheriff's cruisers waited with lights flashing. Not blocking, escorting. Nina had notified the department of the court order. Deputies were present for safety. Tom Bridger stood on the shoulder with a photographer. Notepad out. Camera aimed at the D9. I turned into the subdivision. The treads scraped smooth asphalt. Streetlights reflected off the blade. Neighbors came outside. First 1 porch light, then 5, then 20. People stood in driveways in bathrobes and shorts, phones raised, recording. The sound of a D9 crawling through a quiet subdivision at night is not something you forget. It is low, constant, and absolute. It fills the air like weather. I stopped 40 feet from Brenda's mansion. The headlights lit up the facade. Beige stucco, arched entry, decorative columns, coach lights on the 3-car garage. Brenda came out the front door in a white bathrobe. No makeup, no Gucci sunglasses, no clipboard. She was screaming before she cleared the threshold. "You can't do this! This is America! Someone call the police!" I stepped down. My boots hit the pavement. I pulled the court order from my back pocket and held it up in the streetlight. I read it aloud. Every word, clear and steady. By order of Judge Patricia Keene, the unauthorized structure on lots 41 through 45, situated on land deeded to the Lawson family in 1962, is hereby ordered removed. The landowner, Garrett Lawson, is authorized to execute the removal. Brenda dialed 911. "There's a maniac with a bulldozer destroying my house. Send everyone." The dispatcher's response was short. "Ma'am, we are aware. Deputies are already on scene." I looked at Deputy Weeks, the same man who had stood on my porch that morning with the demolish notice. He gave me a single nod. I climbed back up. I engaged the blade. The hydraulics whined as 12 feet of steel dropped to pavement level. I pushed the throttle forward. The D9 hit the front wall at 9:47 p.m. The sound was extraordinary. Stucco cracked like eggshell. Wood framing splintered. Glass shattered in cascading sheets. Windows, mirrors, sliding doors. A waterfall of breaking glass. The decorative columns crumbled sideways like plaster. Because they were. Limestone dust rose in a massive cloud, lit by headlights and phone screens. The smell hit instantly. Fresh broken wood, drywall powder, shattered tile, and the sharp mineral scent of pulverized concrete. The roof buckled. The ridgeline sagged, split, and collapsed inward with a groan that sounded human. Rafters snapped like matchsticks. Terracotta tiles slid in sheets and shattered on the driveway. 3 passes, methodical, clean, the way I have done it 1,000 times. By 10:20, the mansion was a pile of debris no higher than the fence line. Brenda was on the lawn, on her knees, silent now. Deputy Weeks walked over to Wade Hargrove, who had arrived 10 minutes into the demolition. "Mr. Hargrove, we need to ask you some questions about the 2018 subdivision survey. You can come voluntarily, or we can formalize this." Wade went voluntarily. I shut down the D9. The engine ticked in the silence. Dust drifted through the streetlights like slow snow. I climbed down and drove home. Lily was asleep. The house was quiet. The limestone walls were cool to the touch. The county grand jury indicted Wade Hargrove 3 weeks later. The charges were survey fraud, filing a fraudulent instrument with the county recorder, and wire fraud related to the sale of homes on land he did not own. His attorney negotiated, but the evidence was a concrete monument in the ground, and 63 years of unbroken deed history. There was no negotiating with a monument. 4 other families in Stone Ridge Estates discovered that their homes also sat on incorrectly surveyed land. Not all of it was mine. Some involved a second parcel owned by a neighboring ranch, but the root cause was the same. Wade's 2018 survey was a work of fiction designed to maximize his buildable acreage at everyone else's expense. All 4 families filed suit against Hargrove Custom Contracting and Lone Star Land Services. Wade's developer insurance carrier began settlement negotiations before the first deposition. Brenda was removed as HOA president at an emergency board meeting held in someone's living room. The vote was 94-3. The 3 votes in her favor were Brenda, her sister, and a woman who later said she had pushed the wrong button on her phone. The criminal charges against Brenda came in waves: filing a false lien, criminal harassment, criminal mischief for the fence cutting, supported by trail camera footage that even her own attorney called devastatingly clear. She was also named as a co-conspirator in the survey fraud case after prosecutors found emails between her and Wade discussing the property line adjustment 3 months before construction began. My civil suit settled 6 months after the demolition. Wade's insurance company and the remnants of his developer corporation paid $620,000. The settlement covered property damage, legal fees, harassment damages, and punitive damages for the fraudulent lien. I did not keep the money for myself. Not most of it. I used $100,000 to pay off what was left on the ranch mortgage. I set aside $50,000 for Lily's college fund. The rest, $470,000, went into a new non-profit I established with Nina's help, the Lawson Property Rights Fund. Free legal assistance for homeowners and landowners in the county who face HOA abuse, boundary fraud, or unauthorized liens. Nina serves on the board. Earl Stanton is the honorary chairman. Jesse Vance provides pro bono survey consultations. In the first year, the fund handled 19 cases. 14 resulted in lien removals. 3 resulted in boundary corrections. 2 resulted in criminal referrals. Lily helped design the logo. She drew a fence with an open gate. On the gate, she wrote 2 words: "Come through." I framed the original drawing and hung it in my office next to my father's deed. Stone Ridge Estates still exists. The homes still stand, all except Lot 43. That lot is an empty clearing now. Grass is growing back. I mow it twice a month. Sometimes Lily rides her bike down there on Saturday mornings and waves at the neighbors. They wave back. Every one of them. Earl Stanton came by the house on a Sunday evening about a month after the settlement finalized. He sat on my porch. I handed him a glass of iced tea. The sun was going down orange and gold over the western fence line. The live oak trees threw shadows 100 yards long across the pasture. You could hear Lily playing piano through the open windows. Something bright, something new, something she had written herself. Earl listened for a while. Then he set his glass down and looked at me. "Your daddy would be proud, son." I did not say anything. I just watched the light fade and listened to my daughter play. The mansion my father built from local limestone still stands, solid as the day he laid the first stone. It is not going anywhere. Neither are we. If you have been bullied by an HOA that overstepped its authority, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. And if this story made you feel something, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe. We have more stories coming, and they are all true.
Brenda Hartgrove spent 8 years believing that authority meant nobody could question her. She fabricated fund, manipulated board votes, and weaponized county processes against a man who had done nothing except inherit his fatherland. She thought she was untouchable. She was wrong. Garrett did not win because he got angry. He won because he stayed quiet and let the paperwork do the talking. He put the original deed. He verified the survey. He documented every fabricated violation, and when the evidence was airtight, he let the court hand him the order that made everything legal. That is the lesson here. If you are dealing with an HOA that is overstepping, don't argue at the meeting. Document, file, record request, pull your original deed and survey, build a case so clean that no judge can ignore it. Garrett used his settlement to establish the Lawson Property Rights Fund, which now helps homeowners fight fraudulent HOA action across Texas. If you have experienced something similar, a board president who made up rules, invented fines, and tried to push you off your own property, put that in the comment. Your story matters. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. because the story coming next week involves a city inspector, a hidden easement, and a homeowner who play a longest game I have ever covered.